passion and sorry, yeah, thank you for that. Research to date actually provides two approaches to assessing coaching expertise and coach development. As coaches, one of our prime responsibility is to invest in ourselves or see ourselves developing in meaningful ways so that we can contribute back to our clients. And research says there are largely two ways to judge or evaluate coach expertise. The first one of which is behavioral assessment, and the second is to assess a coach's knowledge base. A lot more research also says that both the approaches are flawed because we think the fact that both the approaches are unable to adequately improve upon how to coaches put their knowledge into practice. So the fundamental questions really are, what knowledge should be taught? What is the optimal method for teaching this knowledge? And how should we assess to encourage learning? Ideally speaking, an expert should be able to apply expert knowledge in an expert manner to solve complex problems. That's what expertise should mean, right? And to my mind, this is about wisdom. Seeking wisdom is all about exploring in the classroom and beyond the books, which is why we are here today, embracing the challenges we all face together. So for me, wisdom is hope, wisdom is our shared journey. And as a chapter today, we want to start a dialogue, which is a continued series for the next 5 or 6 months, which will bring to all of you multiple approaches, tools, techniques, frameworks, philosophies around the theme of coach development. In taking time to pause and reflect on our professional identity, it is perhaps a salutary reminder that wisdom is not a destination. And I invite all of you to be a part of this journey starting today. On that note, I am very privileged to welcome Renu, who's our marketing and communications head, to welcome LaTonya for this session and also share her thoughts around the diversity and inclusion piece.
Thanks, Rupinder. Thanks for setting the stage for what we're setting to do the rest of the year. I first met LaTonya. I heard her speak at the Institute of Coaching event a few months ago. And my first reaction was like, wow, this is so refreshing. And it is so different because you look at the topic and it seems the same everywhere. You have a lot of activism, you have a lot of views and opinions, but how do you navigate all of that? And I saw that richness come out in LaTonya's session. So I'm sure when she takes stage and you're going to be enriched with her experiences and her learnings from what she's done. To share with you more about her, LaTonya Wilkins is an award-winning founder of Change Coaches and is a best-selling author of Leading Below the Surface, How to Build Real and Psychologically Safe Relationships with People Who Are Different from You. She also specializes in coaching executives to lead below the surface by fostering psychologically safe, authentic relationships across differences. A much sought after keynote speaker and executive coach, LaTonya has inspired global audiences and transformed leaders at renowned organizations such as Google, New York Times, and various nonprofits. She's also an adjunct MBA lecturer and coach at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, and she combines academic excellence with practical insights. LaTonya, thank you so much. I know it's 8 a.m. in the morning, and we've got so many people joining us from all over the world, and they're waiting to hear from you and your rich insights. Welcome to today's session.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm so honored by that introduction. And so it's really great to see all of you today. So first off, Renu, this is not early for me. I just had a bunch of I had another talk with another ICF group last night until 10 p.m., which I'm usually in bed by like 8 p.m. But I just love coaches so much. And these folks had asked me to do this talk, and I just know how important this topic is right now. So in the interest of supporting the coach community, I did the talk last night. Why do I support the coach community? Because this is our time. This is so important right now. As Rupinder said, investing in yourself is important. But we are at a point in time where investing in yourself as a coach might look a little different than it did before. I think, I've been coaching since 2018. And when I first started coaching, it was all about, techniques, powerful questions, how to coach. And I was very, very nervous about being perfect with that stuff. And now it's different. It's just way different. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Our clients are going to look different. Our clients' problems are going to look different. I know we're not therapists. I'm not saying that, but we have to deal with today's world. We have to navigate. This is such a great time for coaches. I think we are going to be more important than ever. So congratulations for being here, because this is really the first step to prepare us for the future. So what are we going to do today? I'm going to share a couple of slides, my screen here. This is going to be our journey today. So we're gonna talk about the world we're living in, how it's VUCA, and many of you probably know what that acronym means. We'll talk about that. Then I'll talk a little bit about DEI and how it relates to this VUCA world. So I see these two things as integral to each other. I also see wellness as a part of this, because again, everything is changing in our societies globally. I'm going to give you a little timeline around DEI in the U.S. It's and I know it's U.S. focused, but we're going to talk about a point here of how this works and what this means and what our role is in it. And then we'll talk about coaching below the surface. We are going to have a couple of breakouts so you can have some time with your colleagues. I think this is meant to be a workshop. So you come out with some ideas on how you can coach below the surface. So I think I've been introduced here, and thank you so much, folks. So as Rupinder had said, and Jayshree had said, I do many things. I run a company. I run a coaching and leadership development firm, Change Coaches. We mostly do a lot of executive and leadership development. I also do a lot of coaching. We do a lot of group coaching. We do a lot of team coaching. So I'm an author of Leading Below the Surface. It's a best-selling book. It's all about building psychologically safe relationships across differences and within organizations. I also am a coach and professor at Kellogg School of Management and a LinkedIn top voice. I always love connecting with other coaches on LinkedIn. So I strongly recommend, if you want to do that and you want to keep the conversation going, you could go ahead and click on that QR code. All right, so we don't have a poll set up, which is okay. So I'd love to just kind of start off in chat and hear from some of you. So there's a lot going on in the world, not just here in the US, but everywhere. So I'd love to hear about what you think about what's going on across the world right now. Are you optimistic that we're going to get through all the challenges? Is it about the same as always? Are you not seeing like any of the stuff as big changes in the world, or are you convinced it's ending? I know that one is a little extreme and exaggerated, but that's the reason why I do this. Hopefully we get a little bit of chuckle out of this. But if you want to go ahead and put A, B, or C in the chat. So are you A, optimistic, B, it's about the same as always, or C, you're convinced that it's ending? And then I'll watch these as they come in. D, I love this, Alex. D, all of the above. See, I love that we have a sense of humor. It's early in the morning for me. So we got a lot of A's, all of the above. Come on, all the above people. That's kind of cheating. You gotta give me an answer. C, condensed its ending. Long-term A, short-term C. Yeah, so this is all how we're feeling about the world. And, it's so interesting because us coaches, I think we're pretty optimistic people. I think it's because our work is so intertwined in positive psychology and embedded in positive psychology that a lot of us are optimistic on how we're gonna get through everything. So I'm also optimistic. I think we are in a new world. And I also think at the same time, I feel very lucky and fortunate to be a coach because I'm able to be in a position to help the world navigate like all of these new challenges. And so if anybody knows what VUCA means, type it in the chat, but we are in what is called a VUCA world. So I'll talk a little bit about my experience with VUCA worlds and what that means and that landscape. So one of the things that I did before I became a coach, thank you, Ajit, you know exactly what this is. So Melissa, you know exactly what this is. A quick chat GPT would get you there, but volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So before I became a coach, I first started a career in HR, and then I hated that. I was a recruiter, and it wasn't really for me. So I went back to business school. And after I got out of business school, my first job was consulting. So I did consulting with PwC. And so it was a traditional consulting job. It was really, really neat. It was human capital and strategic change. One of my favorite jobs, the only reason why I really left that job is because of the travel. But one of my favorite clients was the Center for Disease Control in the U.S. So it's like the WHO of the world, right? But except in the U.S. So the CDC at the time, it was really working on something new that I never heard of. I was young in my career, and the thing that they were talking about and the thing they were working on was called zoonotic diseases. So I think we all know what zoonotic diseases are now because of COVID-19. So if you didn't know what they were before, we saw COVID-19, we saw that play out. They're still not 100% sure where COVID-19 came from, but the first place that they were thought to originate, or the virus was thought to originate, was in a wet market, so passed from animal to human. So this was when the CDC, this was a time when they were first starting to see this threat. They were starting to see the effects of climate change, and they were starting to see that diseases were going to look different. And so we had to live differently as humans. We had to make sure that we were getting vaccines. We had to make sure that when we were doing development or urban planning, that we didn't put things too close to certain habitats of certain animals. And so at the time, like I said, these were called zoonotic diseases, but this was the first time that I heard VUCA, that everything was volatile, everything was uncertain, everything was complex, everything was ambiguous. I want to fast forward, probably about a decade, and that was when I did one of my first keynotes ever at Change Coaches, and it was Disrupt HR Chicago, and I did it on what the world was calling wicked problems at the time. So not only were we living in a VUCA world, not only were we having these different types of diseases, but we're having these things called wicked problems hit us. And these are very, very complex problems that were created by a VUCA world. And although all the technologies and everything's great, I mean, how many of you use ChatGPT every day? I know I do, but I know all these technologies are convenient for us, but they also create new problems. And we have to really be very, very aware of how we're rolling these technologies out, how we're using them, and understanding some of the problems that they cause. One of the problems that these technologies cause, and again, these are technologies I use every day. I'm not a Luddite, but loneliness. And so let's talk about this VUCA world and some of the problems that it creates. So we are consistently seeing that belonging is a huge predictor of employee engagement. Why? Well, let's go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? People need to feel like they belong. And it's more necessary than ever. This is not a DEI thing. This is a human thing. All humans need spaces where they belong. It's not DEI. So it's like one of those fundamental leadership principles that we talk about. So if some, I'm sure all of you have taken some sort of leadership course, some of you are probably leadership coaches, and this is as important as a skill like leadership strategy or leadership vision, right? These are fundamental things. This is now fundamental. So if you are thinking also about a fundamental principle of leaders, which is building trust, this goes on that same page. Again, this is not a DEI principle. This is a human principle. That's the first thing we need to understand. The VUCA world is creating this, that humans want to get back to being human. Humans need to belong, okay? This is very, very, very concerning. Some of you may have children that are Gen Zs. Some of you may have nieces and nephews, family members. Some of you may mentor some of these folks. So the Gen Zs have reported very, very high rates of anxiety, very high rates of unwellness, stress, anxiety. We're seeing this is getting really, really large. I actually am on the cusp of X and Gen Y. So I'm like, right, I'm more of a millennial, but I'm like right on the cusp of that. So I understand both generations. I'm in my mid 40s, and we're seeing this with people my age as well, but it's really pronounced with Gen Z to the point that it is very concerning. There's a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I strongly recommend it. But this group grew up with forces that many of us did not. So they grew up with being on the internet constantly. I think we're still understanding what the effects of this are. We still don't know entirely. I do think there's more nations could be doing more about social media. I mean, this is an age that they get on their phones and they get bullied. Like, who knew that's happening now, right? Things are like that are happening. It affects people's self-esteem. I was at a dinner last week with a bunch of people that I didn't know who are a little bit older than me, some of them a lot older than me. And it was very concerning, the conversation that we had, because they were blaming Gen Zs for this. They were like, oh, this generation is really, really, really fragile. I don't understand mental health days. That doesn't make any sense to me. And again, it's like, what? Okay. And I get it, because this is what we work with a lot of organizations on, some of this multi-generational stuff. But again, it's like when we have views like that, we're not successfully navigating a VUCA world and what that looks like, and the effects it's had on different generations. That might not have been your experience, but ask yourself, was any of this stuff existing when I was growing up? Like, what was it like? Like, I know for me, yeah, computers, like when I was young, we had a big giant computer in the house, but I'm still old enough to remember that my parents had 8 tracks, right? And so I can understand like the edge of that and what that looks like. So all this stuff, like I can't imagine growing up online. Like everything is on, like I can't imagine. I mean, I'm old enough where that wasn't the case, and I was able to go to the frog pond and spend all day on my bike with with the neighborhood kids. And that is not happening more. Kids are, playing on their phones, and they're not even going out and playing in some areas. Psychological safety is also very important. And again, this goes back to that VUCA. Again, this is not a DI thing. It's a leadership thing. And this is, I'm, one of the reasons why I wrote Leading Below Surface is because I was so obsessed with leadership research and theories and archetypes. And I was seeing, gosh, these archetypes that we have, even though they kind of got us here, they won't get us there. They won't move us forward because they don't really think about or consider today's society. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. If you have, type yes in chat. But this Gallup recently released a report. It's the 4 needs of followers. It's really, really interesting. And I downloaded it last month. But this is, and this, I've talked to my students about it a lot as well. So as we move forward, I think this was even published, it was published as recently as last month. But I love this model because, again, this takes in account VUCA. I haven't seen a lot of that, but today's followers want something different from their leaders. They want hope. So congratulations, coaches. All of you are pretty optimistic. You're able to offer a sense of hope to our clients. Trust. We want to be able to have integrity, respect. These things still matter. Honesty. Sometimes we might think, oh, people don't care about that. There's so many lies and things that people get ahead, but this is still really important, especially with Gen Z. Compassion. We need to be cared about, listened to. So this takes me back to that conversation last week and the table when they didn't have compassion. And I'm like, how are you going to get people to follow you? Their thing was just work harder, work harder. Yeah, I think it's not that this generation doesn't want to work harder. It's just that they are going to need different types of breaks, different types of navigations to do that. And then stability. And we can't control external forces, but we can control internal forces, right? We can make sure that the way that we react internally creates some of these things. So I find this study, again, very, very fascinating because this is very, very important. And yeah, so just make sure that you go out there and you find this report. People are asking for the presentation. I'm not going to be able to provide that, but what I can, and this isn't my scholarship. So I strongly, if this is something you want to read more about, go out to the Gallup website and you can download the report. It's free. Okay. All right. So how do we get, and now I'm shifting to DEI because it's DEI. The way that I think about it is it's just one way or one form of maintaining humanity in a VUCA world. Okay. It's not everything. It's just one piece. And, I have this bigger diagram that I usually will use, but wellness is in there. Again, there's all these things that are important. And so the big thing here is, and again, this is very US centric, and this is like the US government and how DEI came about. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, it kind of starts with like laws, early foundations. There were a lot of riots here in the US. There was a lot of violence. And so that led to human rights, like basic human rights bills, right? It was very politics, structures and systems. But what's really been really interesting to see is over the years, it became like organizations have started seeing like more and more how important humans are and humanity is to the workplace. I think what's happened though is now that we've have all these new technologies at our fingertips, people are struggling again to understand what the human relationship will be with different types of AIs, what that's going to look like. But for the most part, DEI it's become a core value for a lot of organizations. And here in the US, and I'm not getting partisan here, but in the US, we're seeing the US government kind of say to a lot of organizations to kind of roll back some of their policies. And a lot of organizations are having a hard time doing that. There's like no way they can do that because it's so embedded in their values. Like, think about it. Like, if a government told you to roll back employee engagement, would you be able to do it? It's probably built into everything, right? If it told you to roll back, leadership development and building trust, and you had to lead a certain way in your organization, could you roll that back? No. And so the big thing I want to tell you here is the government just gives us the minimum. of how do we need to treat people? What does that look like? Breaking laws. I know this is global, so you have different governmental laws in different places. But think about that. Like that's a prompt that we can reflect on as coaches. Like what are the laws of the government? And even ICF, like ICF, we have basics. They give us the basics, right? But then the rest is how do we want to be? Like, integrity, like we have that. We have inclusion. But like let's think forward, like how do we want to embed those values in our coaching practice? And we can't rely on the government, right? We can't. And I think we're seeing this more and more. Um, and that's why our roles will become more and more important, and especially across the world as coaches. So I want to tell you a little bit about how this affects coaches, and then I'd love for us to go into a quick breakout, like a 5-minute breakout that Rupinder will set up for us, so we could kind of discuss our issues that are coming up as coaches as a result of this VUCA world. We can have I facilitated this conversation last night with another group of coaches. It was very robust, and I'm really, really interested in hearing globally some of the things that you're seeing as a result of this VUCA world. But we have to be, I call it DEI fluent, but it's so much more than just diversity, equity, inclusion. It's wellness. It's um, it's understanding multi-generational forces, but we have to be DEI fluent due to changes in our demographics. Like I talked about, again, the changes in generations, just the world can be really hard. And what are we doing to support our clients, and how will we need to support them in different ways? And then most of us will have, if we're really successful and we have really active practices, we're going to have diverse client bases. As I was telling the group yesterday, I mean, it's 8 a.m., so I haven't coached. I have a lot of coaching today, but yesterday I coached about 5 leaders one-on-one. And then I had a sales coaching session where we coached and trained a bunch of sales leaders. And 100% of those clients were different from me. 100%. And it's just how it goes now, folks. Sorry. I know, like when I first started as a coach, I remember asking mentors, like, what should I do? How do I do this? And most of them said, find a niche and make sure that niche is people similar to you because they're going to trust you the most. I was like, oh, and so as I asked more and more people, they were like, oh, I like some examples that I heard. I'm a mom, so I coach moms. I'm a former athlete, so I coach athletes. It's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but they're still different from you. And are we assuming that we understand them already? You can't assume that. It's like, being a Black woman. Some people would say I coach other Black women because I'm a Black, but again, and we're going to talk about that in section 2. I promise we'll get to that. But it's like, the fundamental responsibility of coaches is not that, right? It's curiosity, it's facilitation, it's not boxing. And there was a lot of boxing, and I was just really confused when I first started because I did coactive coach training, and I was like, wait, isn't in my coactive training, I learned that we weren't supposed to put people in boxes. And so like, why are coaches boxing people in their practices? And so everybody think about that. Like, let that sink in. What if 100% of your clients were different from you? Because they are. They are. It doesn't matter. Like, again, if you're from the same country, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're from the same socioeconomic background. None of that matters. Okay. And so really thinking about that and like how people are different. People will have more diverse issues. They already do. I have more diverse issues. All of us have more diverse issues. When I'm coaching executives, they have more diverse issues. And some of those are with their children, but some of those are just, my gosh, LaTonya, like, I'm really trying to think about how we use AI, or I'm really trying to think about how we we free up time so people can do more human parts of their jobs. Like these things are, wow, really? Okay, we are human. I didn't know that this was something that we are thinking about. And again, we wouldn't have been thinking about this, like, when I was growing up, like I was, I was a kid with 8 tracks, like hanging out with that. Like, and now it's like, wow, like everything at our fingertips. It can be very, very overwhelming. And so this is creating diverse issues and people, diverse challenges, and I'm gonna talk about that in section 2. But before we get to that, Rupender is gonna put us into some breakouts. We're gonna go into rooms of 3 or 4. So let's discuss what types of issues that we're having as coaches and how that's different from before. Okay, so we'll come back in about 5 minutes.
I've opened all the rooms. I'm hoping that everybody's able to see their respective notification on their screens. And we would invite you to join your breakout rooms and come back in 5 minutes. I'm hoping all of us can see their respective breakout rooms. In case you're facing a challenge, please let me know. So, Millie, should we broadcast 1 minute before we close the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I
so
think
that
we should do that.
What
5
is the
minutes is what you have
question
given, right?
my breakout room people were asking? What are we supposed to discuss?
So she had these 3, Jayashree, things,
Correct,
3
yes.
pointers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to ideate what sort of diverse clients, and maybe LaTonya. LaTonya, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah. The question is, what types of new challenges are you seeing with your clients in this VUCA world?
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of new challenges are you seeing in this book? Okay.
Yeah. With clients. Yep.
Yeah. I think somebody will have to put me back.
Rupinder, I think you should put it on the
No, you could
broadcast.
broadcast it. You could broadcast that.
that while I'll put back Jayashree in. Jayashree,
I
which
can
room
join
you're part?
because I
You
can
have
join.
the
Yeah.
perfect. So let me just broadcast this question to everyone.
Yes.
So I'm just speaking it loud, LaTonya, just to make sure that I've got it right. What kind of challenges are you seeing with your clients in the VUCA world?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In 5 minutes, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I've broadcasted it on the group as well.
Okay, great. All right. How many minutes do we have? 2?
I thought, Rupinder?
I'm just gonna, Rupinder?
So
You're
I
on
did go
mute.
into a breakout room to just quickly check on them if they've got the questions, and the discussion is going
Rupinder,
on
I put it
fine.
on the broadcast, don't worry.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Millie.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take a minute, get some water. Is that okay? Do we have, I think we have,
Please do that.
okay. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
So we need to give them 2 minutes more, Rupinder?
Yeah, I think let's give them 3 minutes, Millie, because
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a minute to just get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the and warm up. So maybe, yeah, 7:14. Yeah. Yeah. And we have a hard stop at 7:30, right? No, 8 o'clock. We have time
8
till
o'clock,
8.
8
Yeah, yeah,
o'clock,
yeah.
yeah.
We've got time till 8. Perfect.
All right, I think we're ready because I think we have 45 minutes to go, right? So we can get
Yes,
people back.
LaTonya.
Okay.
Rupinder, are you there? Can't see her. Do you want me to close all the rooms and bring them back? Because I don't see Rupinder. I don't know.
Oh no, maybe she lost her connection. Yes, let's
Yeah, I can just close all the rooms so they come back here.
yep.
We have about 39 seconds for them to come back.
Okay.
I've just closed the group, so.
Hey there.
Hello.
Oh, this is the wrong comment. I think I just come in and there are breakout groups, right?
We're just closing the breakout room, Stephanie. Hi.
Oh, hi. Nice. I
It's all
just
good.
managed to come to the desk, so I'm just waiting. What shall I do? I'm waiting. I see. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. So I'm gonna take my spotlight off here for a minute because I'd love to hear from a couple of groups. So if anybody's willing to share some highlights from your group live, I also encourage the chat. So if you can maybe in the chat just put one issue that bubbled up in your group that kind of rose to the top as something that has come up due to the VUCA world, that would be great. And if anybody's willing to share, you could just raise your hand and I'll go ahead and put you up here on stage. So if anybody's willing to share, and if you're not willing to share, you could just share in the chat. I think someone's off mute. Let me just, sorry, Benedetta, I'm gonna mute you because I think we're getting some background. Yeah, okay, great. Awesome. Okay, let's go with, is it Conwall?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. So I was with Sunil. Though initially we started talking about a different question about diversity. Then when you prompted this question about challenges in this VUCA world. One challenge that that really resonated was because of the VUCA world, probably I have invested more time into emotional regulation. That's why I am attracting people who require some tools in emotional regulation. I get those as clients, and they ask for the tools. So it's a coaching conversation. So that's a challenge for me. And little bit more reflected, and I understood what tool I'm using, because any challenge is actually a emotional regulation challenge only. It would boil down to emotional regulation challenge only. What tool I'm using to really regulate at that moment. Yeah, so that's what.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting. I just, the last podcast episode I did, and I'll share that at the end. It was all about how to build a leadership mindset in today's world, in today's VUCA world. And one of the first things I talked about was self-awareness and self-regulation. They're two different sides of a coin. And the self-regulation is big right now, right? It's, we live in this world. So how do I regulate myself? How do I stay calm? How do I stay clear? How do I stay collected? And so, yes, that is something that is going to definitely come up. So thank you for sharing. And then we have HR's role in supporting the leaders. Yes, HR is becoming, again, we're going to become more important. The pace of change. Yes. So the pace of change, again, this has been a lot for people, right? Again, like, and I keep going back to when I was a kid, I was at the frog pond. I used to catch tadpoles and try to raise them as frogs. It never worked very well, but as a child, I thought it would. And, but these things are, again, now it's the pace of change. How are kids responding? What does this look like? What does our world look like? Okay, so I'll turn my spotlight back on. So now we're going to get into the the ways that we could prepare as coaches. So everybody, this is where you want to get your pen and sheet of paper out and take some notes, because now we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. So what are some things that we could do to prepare for the future? I know we're not therapists. Every single time I do a talk with coaches, they're like, oh, I don't know how to respond. I'm not a therapist. Okay, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that we have to we have to elevate ourselves a little bit more and train ourselves a little bit more and invest ourselves a little bit more so we can support our clients in this more complicated world. So educating ourselves, staying updated on DEI, wellness trends. We're going to talk about that. Again, there's so many more things that are part of this VUCA world, but DEI and wellness have been two of the big things that the organizations have focused on. How do we integrate psychological safety and belonging in our coaching practices? Like I said, these are leadership essentials, leadership foundations, coaching foundations. And then I'll talk a little bit about coaching below the surface. This will fly by. And so I'll leave some information if you want to learn more on coaching below the surface and getting a little bit deeper. Today will just be an overview. Okay, so remember earlier I talked about 100% of my clients being different. Even if they looked like me, they were still different. Okay, this is something I'm very passionate about, and I wrote a lot about in my book, Leading Below the Surface. And one of the things that, again, I was frustrated about was the way that we box people in. And so the concept that I talk a lot about is called KPEs, knowledge, perspectives, and experiences. What are KPEs? Well, it's the way that it's all the things that make us different and that make us uniquely us. So as coaches, one of the first things that we heard, especially if we did, probably no matter what the coach training was, we talk about holding our clients whole. And I know in coactive coaching, we talk about creative, resourceful, and whole. And holding our client, in order to hold our clients whole, we have to be open to hearing and experiencing the knowledge, perspectives, and experiences they bring to the coaching relationship. A lot of times, again, we can stereotype this. We could say, oh, this person is from a certain socioeconomic background. They're from a certain caste. Okay, so they're going to be this. No, that's not true. We don't know, right? And so as coaches, it's important to practice inquiry to get to these. So what are KPEs? How do these play out? Well, so let's talk about for me and how my KPEs. So I've shared a little bit with you that I grew up in a very, very, very small town in the US. And I grew up very, very working class, pretty much poor. And so these two experiences early gave me a certain type of knowledge about people. They gave me a different perspective. Some of my experiences, one of my early experiences in childhood was my parents getting separated. And that was really hard for me. I'm the youngest of four. And so I had this difficult experience early in my life. And so I was able to understand other difficult experiences that other people were having. So let's kind of unpack this. So, when you look at me, you probably make a lot of assumptions of what it's going to be like to coach me. But do you see all the stuff I just shared with you? And like those things that I just shared with you have a bigger impact on my life than the things that you would look at on the surface of me. And so that's why KPEs are important. So the knowledge that we have, and that knowledge could be knowledge that we acquired through education, through formal education. I have a master's degree in business, right? So I have that knowledge, and I have that through a certain educational system. I have different perspectives because I grew up poor, and so I understand all that. I grew up as a person that's a black woman or a black person in a small town where there weren't a lot of black people. I also, at the same time, in that town, I had a bunch of elders that they were non-familiar elders, but they helped raise me. So it was like more of a collective system, right? But then when I got older and my parents got divorced, I didn't have that collective system anymore. So I had that experience. So I understand the value of collective systems, right? And then the experiences I've had, like a lot of these experiences were life-changing, right? Like the life-changing experience of my parents separating. And that's just one, but I've had so many other life experiences. And so think about those life experiences that you've had that have really changed your life. And think about, are you asking your clients about these things? Um, One of the things that I do in my coaching practice is I have people do a life timeline. Um, and I'll do a whole session on that. And that leads into values, like leadership values, what that looks like. But what are some of the things that you're doing in your practice to get at KPEs? Because again, we put people in boxes, and I think society tells us that, governments tell us that, like, let's just talk about race and gender, like, or let's talk about caste, but that's only part of it, right? And when we're doing that, yeah, it's a way for our brains to organize the information, but we're organizing humans like we're computers and we're not, right? Like there's so much more to us. And so that's where this term intersectionality came from. And I don't love this term because, again, it's like, I like the concept of it. So today I want to challenge us to think differently about intersectionality. So what is intersectionality? Well, it's having two or more identities that are compounding. So, for example, you could be a poor person and a woman, right? And these are two identities that are compounding to make things even more complicated for you, right? Um, with Again, the reason why I don't love this term, again, is because we're boxing people in and we're making assumptions of what their identities are in these boxes, right? Before we even ask them about that. So that's the thing here is when we're thinking about KPEs and we're talking about Gen Zs and we're talking about all these other identities, like let's stick with the Gen Z thing. You're from that generation. And so what kind of knowledge do you have that's different? What kind of perspectives do you have? What kind of experiences do you have? And let them tell you, oh, these experiences are because of my race. These experiences are because of my class. But it's like, let's not assume those things. And what if we just let what if we as coaches, let's let people be messy? Like sometimes we like think about, like, especially you folks that are leadership coaches, think about those great sessions that you've had. Like it's like it's messy, like at first, but then a couple sessions down the road, it's amazing. You hit a breakthrough, right? What if we let people do that? Like, what if we like, I was coaching someone yesterday and he was talking about all of his KPEs and all the things he was expected to be because of those KPEs. But what if we let it be messy? And what if we, like, his identities were really values based? And so how do how do we do this? How do we get into this when we think about inclusion, when we think about wellness, when we think about diversity? Like, what if we thought about diversity in different ways? And this is really interesting too, because all of you are, from a global perspective, like if you have global clients, these boxes across countries don't work, right? Like the US boxes won't work in India. The India boxes won't work here. The Europe boxes, like I think we also have people from China. The China boxes won't work. But what if we, as global coaches, we were able to use the KPEs and we were able to coach people along these ideas? Think about that. All right. So the first thing, like I said, is educating ourselves around DI. So I talked about KPEs, us thinking about that a little bit differently. And I also talked a little bit about wellness and how we can navigate that a little bit more today. The second piece is integrating psychological safety and belonging in our coaching practices. So let's talk about how do we do that. So in Leading Below the Surface, I talk about biases that we all have. So what I did was I did a study of all of the biases that humans have. And a lot of times we talk about unconscious biases. And one of the things people don't know is unconscious biases, again, aren't just related to DEI. They're related to humans making bad decisions based on, biases. Like confirmation bias is not a DEI bias, right? And so like a lot of times when we think about unconscious bias, it is associated with DEI, but like, again, a lot of these have to do with decision making. They have to do with trust. They have to do with building hope. So when I did this study, there were 3 biases, like when I was thinking about unconscious biases and looking at the total of them, there were 3 that rose to the top. Number 1 is in-group bias. So in-group bias, let's go back to KPEs. Okay, so as everybody is thinking about their own KPEs, an in-group bias that I may have with my KPEs is maybe I tend to have more empathy for people who are from small towns or something like that. I'm just making this up, right? But it's like, think about that. Like, are you like, the more we put people in boxes, the more likely we're going to have this in group bias, right? Like if we're doing that, right? I might, like, maybe you have an in-group bias towards people who are rich, or maybe you have an in-group bias like towards people who are highly educated, right? That's a big one right now. Like maybe there's certain things that you see are like in people who have certain educations that makes them more capable, or you make that assumption. Affinity bias affects coaches a lot. I've talked about that earlier. But again, when I was first starting out, the question was, what is your niche? What is your niche? And it was always something to do with boxes. Like, I'm in this box. So people that are in this box, I coach in that box. And it's like, okay. And then you have this affinity bias towards that. And so it's like, you only want to be around those people. And I get it. Maybe you want to have a niche where you serve a certain group of humans, but think about that. Is there an affinity bias? Like, do you have an affinity bias towards those same people that you're targeting to coach? And, or like thinking about when you're coaching, do you have an affinity bias as you're coaching? Like, for example, if someone is like, if you coach moms and you have someone that isn't a mother, are you biased against them? Do you have affinity bias? Are you moving away? Are you leaving people out of your practice because you have that affinity bias? And then confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is basically a bias that we have when we think something's true. We go into that situation and all the facts show that it's not true, but we still think it's true. Like if we get one grain of data that supports our previous bias, we're going to think it's true. So what's an example of that? Well, if you're trying to coach a new type of client that's opposite from you and you have reservations about that, and maybe it's going fine, like 4 times out of 5, everything's going fine. If you have that one mix up or you have that one conflict, your confirmation bias will say, oh my gosh, I was right. I shouldn't have taken this on. I'm in over my head. So that is confirmation bias. So think about how these things come into your practice. The big thing about these things is they prevent us from creating psychological safety in our coaching practices. What is psychological safety? Many of you probably know Amy Edmondson. She wrote the foreword to my book. And it's the belief that we will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, mistakes, and that we can have interpersonal risk-taking. How does this affect coaches? Well, the big question is, are your clients psychologically safe in your coaching situations? And some of you are going to ask me how we get at this data. I'm going to share a quick tool that will help you get to this. But if your clients aren't feeling safe in your coaching relationships, like, what do you think will happen? Well, they're not going to experience that breakthrough. You're not going to be able to serve as a coach as well. And And you're also probably thinking, of course they're safe. I mean, I'm a coach. I'm coach trained. I know how to do this, LaTonya. But you would be surprised. You know, I share this example because, you know, I survey a lot of my clients and I ask them how safe they're feeling. And, you know, as you're starting a relationship, and this is like any relationship, especially coaching relationships, the psychological safety is really on a continuum. So as you're starting a relationship, it might, again, it's like 0 to 10. You might start at a 4. And then to move up to a 7, 8, or 9, it takes a lot of time and effort. It's like there's a concept called the emotional bank account. And I think it's Franklin Covey. And it's like, you know, you have to put relationships and building trust is about putting in deposits in that relationship and taking out withdrawals. And if you take too many withdrawals, your bank account will get overdrawn. And so it's kind of like that. Like you have to put deposits in, and those deposits are, you know, having conflict and smoothing them out and maintaining trust. And I'll talk about some other deposits, real coaching, which is part of coaching below the surface. Those are all some of those inputs. So that's the big thing here to remember. Psychological safety, it's a continuum. It's not you have it or you don't. So think about your clients and where they're at. Like, are they on a scale from 1 to 10? Are they a 5? How do you bring that to a 6 or 7? And again, it's going to be different with different KPEs. Don't think, oh, as long as I ask more powerful questions, if I ask a good question, that's going to build our safety. That's not necessarily true. And my coach last year that I had, it was like the biggest coach I ever had, the biggest investment I ever made in a coach. And that's when I really learned about psychological safety in coaching, because I was on the other side again. And there were situations where he was like a great coach, but there were situations where I didn't feel safe. And we were able to have a conversation about that. And it strengthened our relationship. And it actually gave me more breakthroughs. So think about that. Like, think about maybe some of your clients aren't feeling as safe. Maybe they're a 5, and that's fine, because anytime you're starting with a coach, you would probably be a 5 too. So think about where people are at and focus on how do you bring that to a 6 or 7? Because it's not you have it or you don't. It's to what degree do you have it? So this is a tool everyone can use. So you feel free to take a picture of this slide. We won't have time to get into this more deeply today, but like I said, I'll have more information on how you could take more advantage of these tools today that I'm sharing. But this is an excerpt from our lead assessment, which measures real leadership, which I'll talk about in a bit, or real coaching. It also measures psychological safety and belonging. So just take a minute and you'll see a rating scale here on the right-hand side. 0 is never, all the way up to 6 is 100% of the time. So these are the percent of times that these behaviors are true. And everybody kind of go through this and just make a guess of, like, think about a client that you have today. Maybe, and preferably a new client. So think about a new client and try to estimate how they would answer these questions. Like, to what degree are they feeling these things? So for example, number 1, to what degree do you think your client feels validated when sharing new ideas, even if they're not widely accepted by you, or even if they're not part of like your plan for coaching this person, right? Maybe they're not a part of your coaching style or, you know, your coaching philosophy. Like, how open are you to these differences? Do you feel safe to disagree with your coach? Like, do you think your clients feel safe to disagree with you? And you're probably thinking, yes, of course they do, LaTonya. Again, like, and again, it's 0 to 6. So maybe it's a 3 for now. But like, let's go back to that example I gave you with my coach last year. There were times I did not feel safe to disagree with him because he was a great coach. He's well known. And I was like, okay, is this something that I should just, you know, forget about? Like, maybe I'm being difficult. And so think about this. Like, do you want your clients questioning that? Like you're telling them what to do and they disagree, but they don't feel comfortable sharing that with you. So, are you at a 0 to 6? Do you feel shunned for being different? So, like I said, I have had 100% of my clients are different from me. I've had clients that have differences that are taboo in our society. And one of those differences that I've had is a client that stated some things about their romantic relationships that they have, and how society doesn't accept that. And so they shared that with me, and it wasn't. It felt like on the surface it had nothing to do with our coaching, but I was able to dig into that more, and actually we had a breakthrough because of it, because I was able to understand that the pressure that was on this person from society not accepting them, and the anxiety that was on this person from society not accepting them, and how that was affecting their leadership. But they wouldn't have felt comfortable to share that with me if they didn't feel safe. And so how often are you showing, and again, putting those deposits out there that it's okay if they're different, and even if it's societal pressures? You feel like your coach holds you whole. So again, it's like with coaching, creative, resourceful, and whole, do you feel like your coach sees your whole self? Again, it's like it's like we ask it. This goes beyond asking powerful questions. It's, are you creating an environment where people can bring out those parts of themselves, those KPEs that you don't even know if that's affecting. You don't even know that's affecting them. Okay. All right, so let's move to our last section. This is coaching below the surface. So this is just taking things one step further. I'm going to give you one more deposit that you can use to build that safety in your coaching relationships. And then we'll take some questions, and we'll kind of get into a little bit also of action planning. So in addition to creating psychologically safe coaching relationships, another way to coach below the surface, or a tool that you can use to get at those KPEs and to encourage clients to kind of bring some of those things out, are real interactions. So let me talk about real interactions, how I came up with this model. So when before I started Change Coaches, I wrote Leading Below the Surface. Before I wrote Leading Below the Surface, I was teaching at the University of Illinois Geese College of Business. And I was teaching leadership, and I was like really frustrated about the leadership models that were out there. They didn't really fit, like I said. So I got obsessed with leadership theories. I started doing a lot of research. And this is when I came up with, again, a model that addressed today's workplace, that addressed today's VUCA world. And that's relatable, equitable, aware, and loyal. Again, relatable, equitable, aware, and loyal. And the acronym is REAL. And I made it real so we'd all remember it. And so we can all, who doesn't want to be a real leader, right? Who doesn't want to be a real coach? And so relatable, let's get into each of these and talk about the deposits that these bring, and how this creates a below the surface coaching relationship. So relatable. I have, like I said, yesterday, I coached like a bunch of people, 100% of them were different than me. One was a Gen Zer. Okay. How do I be relatable to a Gen Zer? Well, this particular client, and please don't make stereotypes, because again, I don't want to box people in, but this person has particularly told me like that a lot of the notes that they take in coaching are via Chat GPT, and like a lot of the reflection they do are via Chat GPT. They bring different types of, they bring images from Chat GPT, like they created their life timeline for Chat GPT. I'm fine with that. Again, that's relatability, right? And again, it doesn't threaten me. It doesn't threaten the way that I coach. It doesn't, as long as it doesn't threaten our results, I could be relatable. So now whenever I'm coaching people of younger generations, I offer that up. Even when I'm teaching at Kellogg, I offer that up, because I'm not teaching a subject. I'm a coach there, and I teach a class called Personal Leadership Insights. So it's really individual. So there's no cheating on ChatGPT. So it's like, how do you be relatable to different types of people? Another relatability thing that I've had is I was coaching someone from an older generation, and they asked me to do coaching via phone. I had never gotten that request, but I did it. And, actually, I was really skeptical at first, but it worked just fine. So again, like, how do we be relatable to different types of people? And how do we be vulnerable? Like, I've had clients where I've been like, am I the right coach for them? Can I hold them whole? And just being open about that. I've never had a client exactly like you, and I want to make sure I hold you whole. So I'd really love to have, a system where we can create some feedback and make sure that we're having ongoing communication. Equity. So thinking about your coaching practices, there's a couple different ways to think about this. Like, number one, do you have equitable products? And that's up to you. So for me, I coach mostly senior leaders, but I do have an equitable practice because I know some people can't afford my rates, and the rates of change coaches. And so I create equitable opportunities. This is one of those. Like, I love being around coaches, and I want to be able to let people have access to like me. And so this is something that I'm doing as service. And so thinking about, are you equitable in your coaching practice? Are you giving people enough attention? And are you coaching at a high level, no matter of socioeconomic background? Or are you focusing more on richer people and making them happier, as opposed to people have fewer resources? That's up to you to decide. But as coaches in this VUCA world, equity is so important. How do we get the magic of coaching out to more people, especially people who can't afford this? Like, how do we get these breakthroughs out there? Especially if that's the work. That's what changes the world, is giving access to us. And everybody can do that in their own ways. I'm not telling you to lower your price. I'm not telling you to do any of that. But again, my model, I have equity built in, and every year I coach people at reduced prices. If they're kids, I'll do it for free, right? If it's high school kids, if I have time, and I have a certain number of those engagements I'll do a year. And like I said, today is also service. So think about how you can pay it forward. So I know I'm gonna get a lot of notes from all of you thanking me for my time. I appreciate that. And my question back to you would be like, how can you pay this back? How can you pay it forward to other people? How can you take this knowledge that you got today and pay it forward and help humanity, help us move forward in this VUCA world? That's how you can thank me, okay? Is doing that. Awareness. So again, we all have different stereotypes. Some of us have different views of people. We might have different religious views. So thinking about like how you might be stereotyping people, how you might be putting people in a box. Again, let's go back to that niche, like the box of niches, right? In that box of niches, are there certain things that you are thinking are true just because of that person's identity? And then loyalty. This one's really important, and you're going to need this one as you start coaching below the surface. You're going to have conflicts. You're going to have times when you feel unsure. Is that it's going to feel risky too. Like, it's going to feel risky to coach below the surface. It's going to be feel risky to ask these questions. It's going to be risky. It's going to feel risky to ask for permission with something and clarifying. So making sure that you stay loyal to the process, even through conflicts, is going to be so important. So even if you're feeling like something didn't land well, being loyal to the process, going back to your client and just saying that. Did that land well? How was that? Can you give me some feedback? Going back to my coach and what was important, that was one of the things we ended up talking about, is we had this really bad conflict and we were able to talk about it, and he was able to stay loyal to the process. And we were able to, again, that was probably the best coach I ever had, probably the most difficult coach I ever had, but probably the best, but because we were able to get real, and he was loyal to that process. So this is a tool that we can take with us, but I encourage you could take a picture of this slide. Again, this is another excerpt from another part of our lead assessment. But again, how do you think your clients would answer this? Like, how would they rate you on this? Like, how relatable? Are you getting distracted? Are you listening to learn and not judge? And some of you are probably thinking, of course, LaTonya, I'm listening to learn and not judge, but I'm sure not. Aware. Do you get defensive when, and sometimes that's a defense mechanism. Like, we don't even know we're getting defensive. And do you stay loyal even through conflicts, or do you cower? Like, what do? Do you pull back? Do you go forward? Do you argue? Do you raise your voice? What does that look like? Okay, so everyone take a minute. And like I said, I encourage you to do this afterwards, because I'm going to wrap up here in a minute, so we have time for questions. Okay, so I'm going to kind of recap with what I talked about today. So we kind of started with talking about our VUCA world, some of the coaching challenges that we have. Then we got into psychological safety. I know there's a quick overview. I'll give you some ways that you can learn more about psychological safety and coaching below the surface. And then I talked about a couple of techniques to coach below the surface. And then one of the things that, before we wrap up and before we go to questions and answers, sometimes I do this in a breakout room, but I'm going to ask all of you to do it in your time after this. But let's do some journaling afterwards, and think about what you learned from your mini assessments and any actions that you might want to take. Have you experienced bias in coaching? Like, maybe from, like, as a coachee or a coach, like, think about those terrible three. Are there any biases that you actively have when you're coaching people? And then what actions will you take to create a more psychologically safe practice? It can even start with those questions, just inventorying where you're at right now. And so here's how to stay in touch, and we'll get to some questions. Again, let's definitely connect on LinkedIn. I have a podcast where I talk about a lot of these topics, so you could follow that. We're on Amazon, Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so you could find Change Coaches also on YouTube. And then you'll see that QR code at the bottom. Coaching Below the Surface. This is it's an ICF approved coach training. Our class kicks off in June. So if you're interested in getting deeper in these topics and even seeing coaching demos, so you could do this better, practicing with a group of coaches, you can scan that QR code and get on our wait list. We'll be giving out more information here soon, but you'll be able to get to our landing page and get on our wait list and be able to stay afloat on updates of that program. So I'd love to see some of you there. And so now what we could do is get to questions and answers. So Rupinder and team, any questions that we have?
Yeah, we don't have anything on the chat yet, but I think participants can unmute your line, and parallelly, if you want, please ask your questions in the chat window and we can take it from there.
No questions? Okay. If we don't have any questions, if folks can leave.
LaTonya, just
Yeah.
one quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, let me just congratulate you for the lovely presentation, but more importantly, I think for the authentic and genuine dialogue that we were able to create in the room. You spoke about, and maybe my understanding is not yet complete because was just too vast for me also to grasp as a coach. You talked about assessment, and you also said on a couple of parameters, why don't you go ahead and self-assess how well are you able to create a safe space for your clients? And to that question, Tanya, I mean, I'm just thinking aloud at this point in time, maybe, is it assessing our own ability to create safety on the behalf of the client, a way of perpetuating self-bias. I mean, we know we are lazy thinkers, right? And
Right. Yeah. So again, this is just a start, right? This is really, there's a lot of concepts that I shared today that it's very high level right now, right? And so this is kind of just getting you in the mindset of what it would take to create a psychologically safe practice. I will tell you that for me, I ask my clients, but I don't think we're there yet. Like a lot of you probably, this is probably the first time you've ever heard some of this stuff. So, but thinking about just what questions you would ask or some of the things that you would consider to create that safe environment. So Rupinder, that's what I was getting at. It's more the concepts and letting those concepts kind of sink in before you step out and just understand what types of questions you would ask. If you're ready to go out there and ask, do it. I'm just thinking a lot of folks that are here today are probably more at a novice level. So they're still thinking about what do I ask and what would that look like? And what are some of the things I should be thinking about?
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, thanks. I think maybe I'll just take a step back and even going back to that space, do I really assume that I have created a safe space? Or do I really question that I've been able to create a safe space is the fundamental dilemma, right? Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, that helps.
And we all know the bias that leaders have. So bad leaders rate themselves higher, good leaders rate themselves lower. So they actually are. So let's take that into account when we're going into this. But it's like, let's again, this is just step one of that. All right.
So we have another question from Kanwal. So Kanwal, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's very related to what you answered for the last one. Though this whole coaching process is actually providing a safe space for the other person to really open up. So that is one thing that the more artful coaching we get into, the more safer space, psychological safe space we are providing. That's one remark. And previously you mentioned about this setting up a communication process wherein there is a feedback system we provide. So at what stage of coaching do we really open this up during we begin with the discovery call itself or yeah.
That's a great question. I think it's starting with the discovery call. With the discovery call, I'll even ask that question like after the first session. So like the first session, I call that discovery session. I don't know how. Sometimes people call a sales session or discovery set. I don't do that. It's like the 90-minute session I'll do with all my executive clients for the first session. And I ask them at the end of that session, how did you feel? And I get some of those questions answered on a scale from 1 to 10, how safe did you feel? Some clients, if we don't have enough time, I'll just send it to them in a survey form. And I think people really like that because it can feel a little confrontational and they're digesting everything from the session. So it's kind of a lot. And so definitely asking them. And then I do it anytime there's any type, we have to use our intuition as coaches, but anytime there's any type of conflict, anytime I'm feeling something didn't land, I'll ask that question. Like, is there something I could have done better? How safe did you feel with expressing that? Another thing I'll do is I'll express positive reinforcement for things that are shared that are sensitive, private things. Thank you for sharing. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me. How can I bring this into our coaching relationship? So those types of things. But yes, I do definitely first, but also have an ability or a structure where you can get some of that stuff via survey and then asking anytime like after it lands. And again, if you're interested in seeing any of this, Coaching Below the Surface involves demos. I could do those demos. But again, it takes a lot of practice to do this. I think a lot of us think, oh, this is second nature. It's really not. It's even, sometimes it's even hard for me and I'm very experienced. I'm a pro. And there's going to be sometimes, it's like, we're not therapists, but like therapists, sometimes they have things that they're like, wow, I'm really good at this. I've been doing this for years, but this one's harder. And so we we have that as coaches as well. So just making sure that you're checking in on yourself and that you understand sometimes it's going to be difficult.
Thank you. Can I just add a follow-up?
Kanwalji, sorry, we are already at 8 o'clock, and I suggest you connect with LaTonya later, one-on-one. And may I invite Surabhi now to formally close the session?
So Jayeshi, just before we invite Surabhi, I also want to take a moment to thank the Bangalore chapter for participating and partnering with us in this event. So thank you so much, Bangalore chapter.
Thank you, Millie, and thank you, Jayashree. It was lovely to be here, absolutely. And I'm sure all the representatives would feel the same way because we've learned so much. And that's what I'll just start with a vote of thanks to LaTonya, is that when, like, of course, when we read that, it is just a gist, it's just a summary. With the whole session today, it was really insightful, right? The new tools, the new frameworks, be it the KE model, be it the real framework, that's the tool. I've written it down so that I don't forget. Intersectability, because that's something new for me. Yeah, the 3 terrible biases. And I'm sure we all would have thought, oh, this is the bias we generally come up with, right? So these were very insightful and helpful for me, as well as all the coaches, because this was more of reflective for us as coaches as well. And definitely that's something we are taking back with us, and we want to use that to grow ourselves as coaches. And I'll also mention something that you said to thank you. I'm sure we all will be giving back to society. Thanks, LaTonya.
Thank you. That's what matters the most. So I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone.
With that, let me also thank Rupinder, because the wisdom you shared on the coaching wisdom that we have to enhance, that was beautiful. And with the whole series for coach development, I'm sure we all will be joining the new series to learn ourselves, because everyone wants to learn and grow. Renu, thank you for inviting us to be a part of the session, because from the whole Bangalore chapter on the behalf of the Bangalore chapter and the MC, I want to thank you for inviting us to collaborate, because that's a collaboration that goes a long way. And not to forget our lovely audience. Thank you so much, all the participants today, because the interactions that you've shown, that was really made the whole experience enriching. Thank you again, and have a lovely week forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Surabhi. Okay.